It's the inaugural speech, and I give the call to the Honourable James Hayward.
President, can I acknowledge the traditional owners of our land, elders past, present and emerging, and just share with you all how thrilled I am that the Honourable Rosetta Shahara was elected to this 41st Parliament. A very exciting and momentous occasion, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have been part of that experience. The only thing I guess that does hit me in the guts a bit is that there's been 40 parliaments without any Indigenous Aboriginal people in this House, and I certainly hope that we will from now on see more Aboriginal people as part of this House. I also recognise the service of our veterans, past and present, for the sacrifice of their families, and I thank them for their service. Congratulate you, President, on your election, and I'd like to acknowledge the work of the past President, the Honourable Kate Doust, for her service. It's an absolute privilege to be elected to this House, and I'm absolutely thrilled. And I know that some of you know what I'm talking about because there's 17 newbies here, and those newbies, like me, I'm sure are absolutely delighted to have been elected, to be given the opportunity to serve in this Parliament. Today I'm wearing the tie of Edgar Wiley Prowse. Edgar was a senator for the Country Party from 1962 to 1973. His son Trevor is from Bunbury. He's been a servant of the National Party, been part of our branch and a great supporter of me personally, and it's an absolute delight to be able to wear his dad's tie on this occasion. I represent the Southwest region. Surely it is the best region in the state. We have the best surf, the best wine, the best beer, the best holidays and the best fun times. And you all know it's true because you pack up every Christmas time and head down there to enjoy the wonderful things that the Southwest has to offer. Not only that, we have a pristine environment. We grow premium quality food and produce, and that food's exported all over the world. That's how good it is. It runs from Mandurah in the north, if you can call that north, all the way to Albany in the south. So it's a pretty big space and it's a pretty wonderful place to be. It's a stunning part of the world. It's responsible for about 20% of the tourism business in Western Australia, and that's the largest slice of the regional tourism space in our state. It's a destination. And when I was a young fella, I had some mates, 5 friends with their cars, and all of their friends all head down to the bush for the weekend. It was their first time, and they discovered gravel roads. Now, I don't know if you've ever driven on a gravel road for the first time, but this was their first time. There were 5 of them driving, and the first guy came to a T-junction and stopped. The second guy slammed on his brakes and just stopped. The third guy ran into the second, 4th into the third, and the 5th into the 4th. They managed to ride off 3 cars. So why am I telling you this story? I'm telling you this story because the thing is that those guys weren't doing anything wrong. They weren't evil. They never set out that day. They were down there to have a good time, but they just did not have any local knowledge. They had never driven on a gravel road before. And you know, when we have, as regional MPs, and there's a pile of us here, 18 of us in this House, okay, it's that local knowledge that's absolutely critical to be able to serve our communities. I guess that story just highlights how important that local knowledge is, and that is why regional MPs are so important. I want to thank the Honourable Jackie Jarvis and Shelley Payne for sharing their stories in their maiden speeches and talking about the struggles because they understand what it's like to live in a regional town. They understand what it's like to live remotely and far away from the city. The problem is when you've got people who make decisions about the future of the regions without actually being there, they sometimes don't get it right. And sometimes when people, as well-meaning as they are, make mistakes, just like those cars driving down that gravel road, it can end up in a bit of a wreck. I've got a friend of mine who his baby was born in the car park at the Wim Creek Hotel. The baby was born there because they went to Karratha Hospital, and because of a directive from Perth that said, look, you don't have the right medical people there, right? You've got to go to Port Hedland. So pack your wife in labour, in the car and drive to Port Hedland. Now, I can understand that somebody in Perth thinks that, to get from Joondalup up to the next hospital is not a big deal, even go in an ambulance. Well, at that time, we didn't have full-time paramedics in Karratha, and you certainly wouldn't be driving. You're sending your full-time paramedic on a drive to Port Hedland because it's 220 kilometres away. So they packed up in the car and headed off. They didn't make it. They gave birth to their child at the Wim Creek Hotel, which is about halfway, about 110 kilometres away, with the help of some volunteer ambulance officers. And that's an example of the types of decisions that can get made when you don't have that local knowledge. And that's why regional representation is so critical. We've just been through a really extraordinary election cycle, as we all know, and I congratulate all of the members that have been elected for the first time and the members that have been re-elected. It was a absolutely resounding win for the Labor Party. I don't need to tell you that, and I accept that that outcome is through a fair and democratic process, and the people of Western Australia had their say, and I am certainly respectful of their decision. For me, I'm pretty lucky to be here, to be honest. I don't know, many of you would have been counting. I'm sure that the Labor Party you guys had plenty of people on the tickets. They were all going pretty well. But for the National Party and our friends at the Liberal Party and some of the crossbenchers here, it was a real stress right down to the last moment that they pressed the button to work out who would be here and who wouldn't. And I was certainly one of those people. Kim Beazley said the other day when he was here that he said, when the election train's going, make sure you're on it, even if it's in the guard carriage. Well, I jumped on the guard carriage as it was leaving the station, and I'm very happy to have made it. It's going to be an interesting 4 years for us in the National Party, but to be honest with you, we're used to being up for a fight. We're used to having to fight above our weight range, and again, we're in a situation where we're massively outnumbered, but we will do the best that we can do, and that's exactly what would be expected of us. For many of yourselves on the other side of the room, you find yourselves as part of the government machine. You have an opportunity to influence decisions from the inside. Despite repeated statements from the Premier during the election campaign and from his candidates on the ground right across regional WA that electoral reform was not on the agenda, it seems now actually it was the most important business that the government want to deal with in the 41st Parliament. We know that because on the second day of the lower house sitting, the Premier announced the process of reform was underway. We have a saying at the Nationals, and that is nobody expects you to win every fight, but they expect you to get a blood nose trying. And President, or Deputy President, I intend to do that for the issues which are important for my community. That's what they'd expect of me, and I will give them nothing less. The regions are full of hard-working people, like Hetty and Herman Crispin, wonderful people who made their way from Holland to settle in WA. They had to clear their land to make their life there, which they did, and grow their family. They had 7 kids, and they've all grown with their families. They've now got 29 grandchildren and 31 grandchildren. Clearly, there was no good television back in the early days in Manjimup. Herman's number 6 son, Peter, and his wife Denise are here. And I talk about Herman because I lived in Manjimup for a while, and I have to say him and his wife and family were a tremendous help to myself and Lee in a probably pretty vulnerable time of our lives. And they really helped us out, and I wanted to acknowledge them here today. The real challenge for my colleagues sitting on the other side, who are regional members, is for them to be able to push back against the agenda which seeks to further reduce the representation of regional people on some idea that counting numbers equates to fairness. I would simply ask, with 16 regional seats in the lower house and 43 metropolitan seats, does anyone think that Manjimup, Roban, Mullawa or Coolgardie has too much influence in the state government? The answer is no. Regional people pull their weight in this state. Regional WA makes up about 25.5% of the state's population, yet they contribute nearly half of the gross domestic product. We provide 30% of Perth's water. The Pilbara alone makes up for 81.5% of the entire state's mineral and petroleum product. WA's mining value was $174 billion in 2020. In the 2018-19 year, the gross value of agricultural production in Western Australia was $10.7 billion, and that makes up for 18% of the country's gross agricultural production, yet WA only has 10% of the farming businesses. So they're punching above our weight, which is great. And that's without touching on the natural beauty and features of our diverse state. I worked as a television journalist for many years of my life. One of the fun jobs I had to do, based in the Pilbara, was to make local TV ads. And I know you all love them when you go down to the bush, the local TV ads. Well, that was my job, being the reporter and the commercial producer in the Pilbara, which meant at election time I had to make ads for the Labor Party, the Liberal Party, the Greens and the Independents. It was fantastic. I backed a winner every time. But it was working as a TV reporter that I really developed a love for politics. I got to meet players over the years from both sides. Kevin Rudd, Mark Latham, John Howard, Richard Court, Jeff Gallop, Alan Carpenter, Colin Barnett before he was a Premier, and all of the ministers, including the Honourable Alana McTiernan and Honourable Michelle Roberts, and many more. I remember doing stories in Port Hedland about the state of their curbing. They didn't have enough money to fix the curbs in Port Hedland, despite the fact that billions of dollars of iron ore was rolling out of the port. Bob Neville, I think, was the mayor or deputy mayor at the time, and he was my talent for my story. And the problem for Port Hedland is that they were stuck in a 1960s time warp, and nobody from any side of government would give them any love. I remember talking to Eric Ripper, probably the Honourable Eric Ripper, I'd say, who was the Treasurer at the time, and he said, you know, these guys up in the Pilbara, they want $50 million. They're not going to get $5 million. And that was the attitude from both sides, not just one. Both sides ignored the state and of the Pilbara, and nobody wanted to. No one wanted to help out. Then this fellow called Brendan Grills came along, talking about an idea called royalties for regions, where 25% of iron ore royalty payments were quarantined to spend in the regions, to catch up on the underinvestment suffered in the regions by successive governments over the years. And that's why I became a NAT. I saw how this policy met the needs of regional communities. I've always believed that government should serve the people, not the people serve government, and that our goal should be to promote prosperity and freedom so that people can enjoy growing their families and doing the things that they want to do. I really see our role and Parliament's role and the role of government as being one of service. Through royalties for regions, the Pilbara and many other regional communities were being transformed. $6.9 billion was invested over more than 3,700 projects. It's the state's only regional development fund, and it's the envy of every other jurisdiction in the country. Unfortunately, the value of this program under the current government has been usurped, with $2.7 billion of the $4 billion program being redirected back to consolidated revenue through cost shifting. There's a big job to do for the people of our regions. I'm committed to working with you and to seeing regional people get the best possible hearing in this place, and that their needs and their aspirations can be heard. I've been hearing a lot of spin lately about how the McGowan government's the best thing since sliced bread. I get it and I understand it. But the reality is that for many people, we still are in a crisis. Our hospital system's in crisis. We have an unprecedented and emerging housing crisis where people can't find affordable homes. You know, I know of a family that have had to split up. Dad's gone one way, Mum's gone to live with a different relative because they can't find housing. They're at the caravan show, buying a caravan so that they might be able to move to a caravan park so they could live together again. I mean, these are terrible circumstances. I know another family, single mum with some teenage kids, again, has to split up the family in order to be able to find accommodation. It's really a horrendous situation, and one that we all need to put our minds to and work together to try to find a solution for. The plight of Indigenous people in our community, the incarceration rates and the living conditions of many Aboriginal people are still totally unacceptable. I mean, one of the things I did as a reporter 15 years ago was go to Roebourne and look at the state of the houses. And government's spent money and done some things, but the reality is there's still a lot of people in that circumstance. And so I congratulate the Labor Party on its win. I understand the excitement. It truly is a monumental victory, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. But the reality is, I think in this House, I think there needs to be some sober minds and some serious thinking about the real issues that are facing the people of Western Australia, because it's our responsibility to find solutions for them. Locally in the southwest, I've been campaigning for the fast train to Bunbury. People are pretty excited about that down there, and it's probably not even really on the radar, to be honest, up this part of the world. We've got a train service that's pretty second rate. In fact, mostly it's a bus service. It depends on what day you go. And I'm really committed to that state building project, and you'll probably hear me harp on a bit about it over the time. But it's good to have a passion, it's good to have a project, and I know that the people of Bunbury and the southwest are really keen to see that kind of development. We're lucky enough to have, when the Forest Highway was built, that the Honourable Alana McTiernan was the minister, and she insisted, as I understand, that the road be wide enough to be able to provide a rail corridor down the centre at some future time. So I congratulate the Minister for the forethought, and I certainly hope to see that we can see that become reality at some point in the future. The people of the southwest are generally excited about the economic and social benefits such a service would bring to the region. Now, there are a few people I'd like to thank along the way who got us here. Like many of us, we've come with the support of a party, and we know that the political parties are made up mostly of volunteers, of people who give their own time because they believe in the values of your party. And my situation is no exception. Up here in the public gallery, I've got the dream team of Monique Warnock, Seb Sciano, Conzo Thiel, and of course my wife Lee, who have been the campaign team in when we ran in 2017 for the lower house seat, and again this time when we ran the upper house seat. You wouldn't find a better team, and one of the things at the Nats is that we're a pretty little outfit, to be honest. We're used to doing a lot with very little because we've never really had a lot, and so our little team, again, we punch above our weight. We made people look the other way in 2017 and certainly think, who the heck are these guys? Why are they running so hard? And delighted to have been elected this time round. Plus there's some others I need to acknowledge who ran, obviously in the upper house. Again, we all know that it's reliant on a lower house vote. So Leonie Lemmy, Peter Gordon, Delma Beju, Trish Leake, Honourable Terry Redmond, Wayne Sanford and Cody Lee Down all ran for me and helped me get the votes needed. And believe me, we needed every single one of those votes because until, as I said, the last moment, just jumping on that guard train as it's leaving. I also want to acknowledge Colin Holt. He's a fantastic gentleman, and the Honourable Colin Holt, he is a character, as you would know, those who work with Colin. He's very much a man who likes to do things his own way, but he has the respect of the communities in the southwest, and he had their best interest at heart. And I thank him for his service and his support and mentorship of me over the time as well. I also need to shout out to my mum and dad, Rob and Dawn Hayward. Dad was a metal worker and mum was a hairdresser. How's that, guys? Hey? They couldn't have kids, so they adopted me from birth. Soon after they adopted me, they popped out 3 of their own. So I've got a brother Duncan, brother Stuart and sister Rachel Hayward. I had a really warm and wonderful upbringing, and I do love them, and I thank them for their love and ongoing support. I absolutely had the most amazing upbringing, and still call them mum and dad, and have what I would imagine is a very normal family upbringing. In 2017, I found my birth mother. She was living in Waroona. I was born in Derby, so I'm a Kimberley boy. I was only there for about 10 minutes, I think, but maybe one day. So I found my birth mother living in Waroona and discovered that I had 2 full birth brothers and 2 half-sisters. My father, Len, had passed, but my birth mum, Lee Rosa, and my brothers, Heath and Billy, were still alive and well. Heath has since passed, but I had the chance to meet him and get to know him. I've also met my half-sister, Rebecca. My other half-sister, Leah, has also passed. I never got a chance to meet her. I'm pleased to report that my mum and dad, Rob and Dawn, and my birth mum, Lee Rosa, were all here for the swearing-in, sitting together for the swearing-in ceremony, which is very wonderful time. Lee and I have 6 children between us: Brittany, Jordan, Jessica, Jackson, Jessica, and Ashton. I'm giving you a hey buddy, Ashton. Hey buddy. And we have 4 grandchildren: Elijah, Nash, Flynn, and Sana. And just finally, I'd like to thank my wife, Lee, who has put up with me all these years. Anybody that's in politics or been married to anyone that's in politics knows it's a pretty hard stretch. Lee has just been magnificent. She's always been there supporting me, always been there to help, always looks glamorous, always ready to go the extra mile. And I've never really met anyone with a harder work ethic than Lee. So thank you very much. And members, that's it from me. I thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me, and I look forward to working with you all. Thank you.
Congratulations, the Honourable James Hayward, and all the best for your time in the Legislative Council.